This is your Sound Off Extra review for WWE Extreme Rules 2018 from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am the Solomonster. Extreme Rules just went off the air a few minutes ago, and overall, I gotta go thumbs down on this show. That's despite a couple of really good matches there at the end. There was some good stuff on this show. It was not a complete abomination, the way I remember Backlash being, for example. But, you know, when WWE wants to stretch these shows out and make them longer, now they're all dual branded, you got to fit more people on these shows. The longer the shows, the more matches you put on there. It's going to take a lot more than 2 or 3 really good matches out of, I think we had 11 on this show. It's going to take a lot more than that, I think, to give people a show that is worth their time. And I don't think Extreme Rules fit the criteria for that. So we'll get into all the matches here in a second. There was some big news, though, that broke online before the pay-per-view went on the air concerning Hulk Hogan that I want to just to touch on real quick here. Hulk Hogan, of course, was excommunicated from WWE about 3 years ago, I think it was, right? 3 or 4 years ago, after the famous tape dropped of him using a racial slur. They cut all ties with him. They took him, quote unquote, took him out of the Hall of Fame. There is no physical Hall of Fame. There is no actual Hall of Fame. There is a web page, and all they did was take his name off of the web page. Apparently, this constituted his removal from the WWE Hall of Fame because in the announcement that WWE made earlier, the announcement was that they were reinstating Hulk Hogan into the Hall of Fame. And that is likely the first step in his ultimate return to the company. In what role, I don't know. Obviously, he's not going to be wrestling. Is he going to have any kind of on-camera role? Probably. I would expect him to make at least periodic appearances, come out, pose, that sort of thing. Otherwise, maybe he'll just be, sort of a goodwill PR ambassador for the company. And, he can go around talking about all the good things that he's been doing over the last few years and making amends for the mistake that he made. No contract, I don't believe, has been signed. There's been no announcement about that, but it's coming. It's just a matter of time. He was backstage at Extreme Rules tonight in Pittsburgh. He had a meeting with the entire roster, the members of the Raw and SmackDown rosters. Apparently, he was very apologetic for the things that he said in the past and the people he hurt, and he used it as a lesson to tell everybody, be very careful about the things you say because everyone's got cameras and all this sort of stuff. And so apparently he was received very well. He got an ovation from a lot of the people backstage, and he was being hugged and embraced by people. So Hulk Hogan has been welcomed back with open arms into the WWE family. And there was a lot of divided opinion about this online. A lot of people, a lot of African-American fans very upset about this because what he said was very hurtful. And, I mean, we've been down this before. I'm not going to, rehash all of this, but, he didn't know that he was being taped. These were comments that were leaked, and that was an invasion of his privacy. We have to put that on the side as a separate issue, but the fact is it did leak. People did hear it, and it was pretty awful, the things that he said. And every time I talk about the Hogan thing, every time I'm asked about the Hogan thing, my answer is the same. I can't put myself in the shoes of someone who was... he was specifically, I guess, referencing with that slur. That doesn't affect someone like me, so I can't put myself in the shoes of a black person if they were deeply offended by what Hulk Hogan said. And so it's hard for me to sit here and judge because I could totally understand why people would not want to see him back. I can completely understand why people would not want him back on their television sets. But on the other hand, you have people who say he paid his penance. He paid a very heavy price for it in terms of his reputation. He lost a lot of money off this and probably other sponsorships and whatnot, even though you look at the whole Gawker thing and what do you get, $140 million payday or something? I don't think Hogan is hurting for cash. But he did pay a price for what he did. A few years have gone by. Does he deserve a second chance? I'm of the opinion that if the WWE locker room is okay with him being back in the fold, and they have forgiven him, and they feel that he is being honest and genuine and truthful when he is, expressing his remorse, then he should be given a second chance. And obviously, if he screws up again, then that's the end. But I'm not going to minimize other people's opinions if they feel very differently that he should not be back. They have a very valid argument. It's a tough thing. I could see both sides, but look, if the wrestlers in the locker room are cool with him coming back, then he's going to have his second chance, and hopefully he can use it in a positive way. But Hogan is back. Where there is money to be made, you knew this day would come. So even if you are somebody who was offended by what he said, this is a business and they're out to make money. And when they see Hulk Hogan, they know they could still make money with him, and this was inevitable. So we'll see what role he may play, if he'll be backstage or even on TV this week. Maybe he'll be at SummerSlam, who knows. But anyway, that's the Hulk Hogan update. This is not surprising news or shocking news, but the news did drop today. And so Hogan is back in the fold. Now, as far as the pay-per-view is concerned, we opened up on the Kickoff show. We had 2 matches. We had Andrade Cien Almas going one-on-one with Sin Cara. When I did the podcast earlier today, I praised their match from SmackDown on Tuesday. I said that was one of the best things I saw all week on WWE programming. I really enjoyed that match they had on SmackDown. Sin Cara looked the best he's ever looked, I think, in his entire tenure, his entire run in the company. And so they went out here and they had a match kind of similar to the match they had on TV. There was one spot, I think it was a Hurricane Rana attempt off the apron that was botched by Sin Cara, and Almas sold it anyway, and it looked terrible. So Sin Cara back to his usual ways, unfortunately. This was not as good as the match on SmackDown, but it was decent enough. Almas won that one. He won this one as well with the Hammerlock DDT. Sanity against the New Day in a tables match. We had Sanity picking up the win after Kofi Kingston ended up through a table. I was sort of in and out during this match. There was something wrong with my stream, and then I left the room and I came back, so I missed a good part of this match. It didn't last very long, only went about 8 minutes. All you need to know is the right team won. Sanity needed this win more than the New Day did. I get the sense that this is going to continue, and why bother if the babyface is just going to win in the first match. And Sanity has not exactly been lighting the world on fire. They have not been winning a whole lot on TV since they've debuted, so they needed this win. They got the win. It was the right outcome. Pay-per-view opened with the Raw Tag Team titles on the line. Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt teaming up against Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, the B team. Bray tagged in early. He had a brief stare down from across the ring with his brother Bo, and there was a buzz in the crowd. The two of them have not really, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think before tonight that these two even touched at all. In a match, in a brawl, anything like that. They've been kept apart largely for a while now, so the crowd was buzzing for this. They know they're brothers, obviously. Bo immediately tagged out to Curtis Axel. People booed. I thought when that happened that perhaps that was a sign of something, but it turned out to be nothing because they ended up wrestling later on in the match. Bray beat him up for a little bit. This was later on when he ended up in the ring with Bo. Went for Sister Abigail. Axel broke it up. Bray hit a giant Uranage on Bo. That looked pretty good. Hardy tagged himself in. Bo shoved Matt into Bray. So that knocked Wyatt to the outside. That paved the way for Bo Dallas to hit Matt Hardy with a draping neckbreaker for the win. The B team is now the A team. New Raw Tag Team champions. You know, it was a nice moment for those guys. They've eaten a lot of shit in their run on the main roster. I was very entertained by Bo's run as the NXT champion. You know, he's a great comedy character. He's been used pretty much exclusively for comedy since he came up to the main roster. I guess there was a period where he was kind of getting more serious, but they've done nothing with him. Curtis Axel, they tried with him, put Heyman with him, put the IC title on him, and it didn't go anywhere. So for them, it was a nice moment. But, you know, you put your tag team titles basically on two glorified job guys. And meanwhile, you've got a team like the Authors of Pain who have barely been on the main roster, but they were on a tear in NXT, this monster squad, and you've got them on the Raw roster now. I have to think this is a transitional champion deal, and AOP is probably going to end up with those titles very soon. The tag team division in this company in general, especially on Raw, is not exactly strong at the moment. When I think of the tag team division, I think of the Revival, I think of AOP, I think of Hardy and Wyatt, who may be on their way to Splitsville. Now the B team. when you get beyond those four, who else is there? Ziggler and McIntyre, they're not really a tag team. I mean, maybe I'm missing someone here, but not exactly a strong tag team scene right now, which is why I keep coming back to AOP. I mean, I guess you could do something with the Revival. I don't see it. I don't see them really getting behind those guys. It's one of the reasons why I think, Jason Jordan is ready to come back. He's sitting on the sidelines, and I'm a big advocate for putting him back together with Chad Gable and reforming American Alpha. Those guys did nothing on the main roster. And even in NXT, I don't think they went as far with them as they could have, but they did nothing with them before they split them up. So there's a lot of, potential, I think, left in them as a tag team. Why not explore that? And if in the end one turns on the other and they feud, fine. But they're not doing anything right now. Why not put the two of them back together? Maybe they get in a feud with a Revival or something, and maybe they could, light a little bit of a spark in that tag team division. It's better than doing nothing with those guys. But in the meantime, Matt Hardy went on Twitter after the match. He tweeted, "It may be time for us to move on." So that probably doesn't bode very well for the alliance continuing between these two. Kurt Angle was interviewed backstage. He said that was a really good, meaningless tag team match that we just saw. No, he didn't say that. But he said that Brock Lesnar is refusing to wrestle any member of the Raw roster. And as a result, he has two choices. Well, I guess three. He can either show up on Raw tomorrow night. He can come to terms on the next date of his next championship match. Or Kurt Angle can just strip him of the title. And that got a huge reaction from people in the building. Got a huge reaction from me. I've been saying that they should just retire the fucking thing. Everyone's doing the yes chant in the building. And so Vince McMahon's plan is working as far as trying to get Brock Lesnar booed. The bigger part of his plan, just because they're booing Brock does not mean that they're going to automatically cheer Roman Reigns, if that's what he's thinking is going to happen here. But hey, we'll see, right? SummerSlam is still a month away. We'll see. Maybe Vince is a genius and he'll prove all of us wrong in the end. If I were a betting man, I would wager that will not happen. We had Finn Balor against Constable Corbin. Corbin looked good, for as long as the match lasted. He was fine. He hit the deep six. Deep six is like the Blue Thunder Bomb. It's just one of those moves that always looks good. Balor was up top for the coup de grace. Corbin shook the ropes and crotched him. He went for the end of days. And Balor countered it. He kind of flipped out of it, turned it into a small package, and got the flash pin. So a fluke win that serves to basically just piss off Corbin and set up the eventual rematch. I hated this finish. The match was fine, but I hated this finish because it just, to me, it doesn't really serve any real purpose. Again, I guess it pisses off Corbin. Maybe Corbin comes out tomorrow night and just massacres Balor. But I hate finishes like this because what's the point? Who's made to look strong in a situation like this? Finn Balor has to roll up Baron Corbin in a flash pin just to beat the guy, and meanwhile Corbin loses. So anyway, we cut backstage where we find the Bludgeon Brothers. They're beating the hell out of Team Hell No. They placed Kane's ankle inside of a doorway, and Eric Rowan took his giant mallet and smashed the door into Kane's ankle. So they did the injury angle there. We had Asuka against Carmella for the SmackDown Women's Championship with James Ellsworth above the ring in a shark cage. I just noticed I wrote Hellsworth in my notes. James Hellsworth actually sounds a hell of a lot cooler than Ellsworth. Ellsworth, almost immediately, the match starts and Ellsworth drops a chain down to Carmella, but Asuka intercepts, and then the referee gets rid of the chain. Then Ellsworth drops that spray bottle from SmackDown, but Asuka blocks Carmella's attempt to blind her with it. Ellsworth, I think this guy had an entire Dwayne Reed in his jacket. Who knows what else he had in there. So then he's trying to pick the lock. He had a lock pick as well in his jacket. He's trying to pick the lock on the cage. The women are outside, meanwhile. And he manages to break free. So apparently he is a locksmith as well. He breaks free. He starts climbing down from the cage. And I was wondering when the match started, I said, boy, that cage seems awfully low. Normally in these cases, the cage is higher. And obviously this is why, because they did a spot where he caught his foot as he's trying to climb down. Somehow his foot got caught. And he ends up hanging upside down. And Asuka sees this. She gets in the ring and she starts kicking the crap out of him. A bunch of fake security guards got into the ring. They're trying to help Ellsworth. Asuka beats them up too. One of them runs away out of fear. Asuka had her own dumb babyface moment here. You guys know all about dumb babyface syndrome. I've talked about that. I've coined that phrase. I've talked about it on the podcast. A lot of babyfaces in this company suffer from it. Apparently it's contagious. So Asuka had her own dumb babyface syndrome moment here in this match. She's standing in the corner. She's staring at Ellsworth. And she's sort of like bouncing up and down like she's ready to pounce, like right before a big fight when the referee goes, okay, let's get it on. She's standing there and standing there and standing there, waiting for what? I have no idea. But obviously, in reality, she's waiting for Carmella to do her spot. Carmella took forever. Finally, she comes over. She shoves Asuka face first into the bottom part of the cage because the cage had been lowered just enough to where Asuka's face struck the bottom part of it, knocked her out, and that allowed Carmella to pick up the pin in a terrible match. It is comical to me how little faith this company has in Carmella to carry on a good match. Reason being, she can't. She's just not that good. She's got a boatload of charisma. She can talk. She's a beautiful girl. I mean, she checks all those boxes off. The work doesn't match up to all the other things that she has. Some people would say that about Alexa Bliss. I've heard that the same argument about her. She's got her fans. She's got her haters. Why does Alexa have the title? She can't work. She's not as good as everybody else on the roster. Because she makes up for it in other ways. She can talk. She's got good presence about her and her facial expressions and all those things that they look for. And so I think it's a similar case here with Carmella. You look at the talent they have in the women's division on both of these rosters. There are women who are far ahead of Alexa Bliss and Carmella. But they're relying on their personalities as heels to get them over and to, I guess, sustain the division until the right person comes along and takes the title away. So this was just full of all sorts of gimmicks and smoke and mirrors and whatnot. And Asuka just snaps. When the match is over, she's furious. She beats up a bunch of the same security guys again. She beats up Ellsworth. She puts him in the Asuka lock. This was terrible. This was absolutely terrible. I was hoping that they would tell the Becky Lynch comeback story and put the championship on her, build her up to SummerSlam. I still hope they do that. I have my hopes up that that's the direction they're going in here, but the way this ended makes me think that Asuka is going to get another chance. We had Jeff Hardy and Shinsuke Nakamura for the United States Championship. Before the bell even rang to start the match, Nakamura gives Jeff Hardy his trademark low blow. He told the referee that he could continue. This is Jeff now. He tells the ref, I can go. And as soon as the bell rings, Nakamura hits the Kinshasa, and he wins the championship in less than 10 seconds. I didn't clock it. It had to be somewhere around 7 or 8 seconds. When he got the pin, I just thought to myself, at least he won. Nakamura finally won one. He finally won a championship. I know he was the NXT champion, but he hasn't had a lot of luck since coming to the main roster when it comes to titles, right? He had, 4 or 5 different opportunities to win the WWE title from AJ Styles. He failed every single time. This time, he was going to make sure that the outcome was never in doubt with that dick shot before the bell. Smart man. Smart man this Nakamura fella is. And, I said on the podcast earlier today, Jeff Hardy is very beat up. He's been dealing with a leg injury. Apparently, when he was coming out for a match with Miz on SmackDown a number of weeks ago, during his entrance, somehow he hurt his leg. And I know his back has been bothering him to where he's no longer using the Swanton Bomb on most house shows. He's reserving it only for TV. So he probably needs some time off, which is why I assume they did the finish they did. But then they went and they announced the rematch for SmackDown on Tuesday. So it's going to be Nakamura defending the championship against Jeff Hardy. Again, maybe it's a short match, to hide whatever injuries Jeff is dealing with. I guess we'll see on Tuesday. But they did make that official. So all of a sudden, the match is over. Nakamura is the new champion. Didn't break a sweat. All of a sudden, Randy Orton's music hits. We haven't seen Orton for about 2 or 3 months now. He comes to the ring. Nakamura, he retreats outside the ring, jumps up onto the announce table, and he's staring at Orton from afar. He doesn't want anything to do with this guy. Orton gets in the ring, and he turns his attention to Jeff Hardy as Jeff is struggling back to his feet. And as soon as Jeff gets to his feet, Orton takes him down, and he stomps right on his dick. What is with these SmackDown guys and going after the dick? Pat Patterson retired 30 years too early. He would have loved this roster. And so with that, Randy Orton walks to the back. That was it. He didn't say anything else. Didn't say anything. He didn't do anything else. Nakamura looked confused, much like everyone watching. I was tired of babyface Randy Orton anyway. Actually, I was tired of Randy Orton, period. But if he's a heel again, at least he'll be in his element, right? He's very publicly made it known that he hates being a babyface. He feels in his comfort zone as a heel. I don't know if this was an official heel turn or not. I guess this was a cliffhanger for the TV show on Tuesday. But very confusing. Obviously very disappointing. I thought those two could probably go out and have a good match. And look, if Jeff is beat up, he's beat up. What can you do? I just have to assume the match was short because of that. So I can't really beat the company up over it. But it just so happened that, when this ended, we had basically a non-match. We had that atrocity with Carmella and Asuka, whatever the hell that was. We had the tag team match with the B team to open the show, which was okay, but it's the B team. So this was not a very good start to this pay-per-view. Then we got Braun Strowman against Kevin Owens inside of a steel cage. This was basically almost all Strowman in the early going. He was throwing Owens around. Owens did fight back. He got a few moves in, hit a frog splash, I think, at one point for a near fall. He was trying to fight back. And then finally, we get to a spot where Kevin Owens handcuffs Braun Strowman to the top rope over in the corner by where the cage door is. He handcuffs him to the top rope. Right? Very smart. If he's handcuffed, you can just climb out. Guy can't chase after you. So Owens goes to the opposite side of the cage. He starts climbing out. Before he climbs, he goes, "Hey, Braun." He does the DX crotch chop, tells him to suck it. He climbs the cage. He turns around again, looks at Braun, blows him a kiss, CM Punk style. And this just infuriates. This enrages Braun Strowman. He breaks free from the handcuffs. And he chases Kevin Owens up to the top of the cage. Now, these steel cages in WWE, I mean, they can call them 15 feet all they want to. They're not 15 feet. They're probably 10 to 12 feet. That's still, look, you got two big guys up there, and Strowman has got to be every bit of 320 or 350. Those are some big guys. Maybe not quite 350, but he's a big dude, right? He is standing on top of this cage with Kevin Owens. And you're just looking at this going, okay, this is not going to end well. Hopefully it ends safely, but this is not going to end well for at least one of these men. And what they tried to do here was they basically tried to recreate the Mick Foley spot from the Hell in a Cell match at the King of the Ring in 1998, which was in this very city. King of the Ring 98 was in Pittsburgh, and so was Extreme Rules. So we're back in the same city, possibly the same building even, that King of the Ring took place. And in a lot of ways, it was almost an identical bump in terms of the way that Owens was sort of thrown off, the way his body flew through the air. It was a few feet lower than Foley's bump was. Foley was every bit of 15, 16 feet up. This wasn't quite that high, but this was still pretty high up. And there's not a whole big margin for error when it comes to, a dive or a throw like this. And Kevin Owens is a bigger guy, and it was a crazy bump. It was a pretty crazy bump. It was also another incident on this show of dumb babyface syndrome. Even though he did it on purpose, I guess. Strowman was laughing about it on the way out, but still, dumb babyface syndrome strikes again. Braun Strowman throws Kevin Owens to the floor, which basically in a cage match gives Kevin Owens the win. So Braun Strowman lost the match. Whether he knew what he was doing or not in storyline is irrelevant. He is a dumb babyface. First Asuka, now Braun Strowman. I said, it's contagious. It's going around. It's like pink eye. Now, I did see a crash pad. They did have a crash pad underneath the announce desk that Owens landed on and crashed through. which Foley did not have 20 years ago. Unfortunately for him, I'm sure he wishes he had that. And I know they used the crash pad. They've used it multiple times. You know, when Shane did the big bump off the Hell in a Cell in the match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania in Dallas a few years ago, there was very clearly a crash pad under there. I mean, I don't have any problem with it. I just wish they would shoot it better so we couldn't see it. Like, I want these guys to not kill themselves. I don't get these people, oh, they used a crash pad. Like, yeah, okay, would you rather they not, you fucking moron? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, if you don't see it, if you don't know it's there, then what's the problem? But unfortunately, when Kevin Dunn and his team shoot this shit, most of the time we end up seeing it. So they got to do a better job of hiding that. But, like, there were a few people, not too many, there were a few people who tweeted me, because I put a tweet up, you know, after it happened with a screenshot of Braun standing at the top of the cage. They had this great shot. It was like this horrifying shot of Owens just, you know, in a heap on the ground. And Braun, he's not holding on to anything. He's standing there. He's just standing straight up on top of the cage. And it was this great shot that they got. And so I just posted a tweet. I said, oh, you know, this is a terrifying sight. And that bump was, you know, very similar to the Foley bump from 20 years ago. And it was pretty crazy. And I got some tweets from people. Like, one person's like, you know, there was a padded cushion, you know, underneath the table. If you missed it, it wasn't as great as everybody says it was. And, you know, I'm just sitting there going, like, I don't understand the mindset of people like that. What did you want this guy to do? Did you want this guy to dive headfirst onto the floor? Maybe we should pull up the pads on the floor. How about we move the announce table out of the way? We'll move the crash pad out of the way. We'll pull the padding back. Let's make sure that the concrete or the wood is all fully exposed. And then we'll throw the guy off the fucking cage and we'll watch him go splat on the ground. And then you can sit at home and go, this is awesome. Would that make you happy? I don't understand this. This guy got thrown off the top of a cage. And I made a comment, hey, that was a pretty crazy bump. Right? I hope he's okay. And, oh, yeah, this was not as great as everybody says it was. It wasn't Mick Foley back in 1998. I'd like to see you climb to the top of that fucking cage and go flying off. Yeah, I get it. It wasn't the Mick Foley bump from 1998, but it was still pretty crazy. You know, it's okay to make comments like that and admit that, even though it doesn't measure up to what you remember from 20 years ago. I'm sorry I offended you so deeply. It was a crazy bump. I give him credit for taking it, but he's also stupid for taking it. Because here's my issue with this. 20 years later, right? Everybody remembers the Mick Foley bump, in part because it always gets replayed and all that, but everybody still talks about that to this day. Let's be honest with each other here. In a month, how many people are going to remember this? Not very many. Middle of the show, Extreme Rules. Nobody's going to remember this. I question taking a bump like that and taking that kind of risk on a show like this. Not only that, you know, I've said this over the weeks. What exactly, here's the other issue with this whole feud. What exactly has Kevin Owens done to warrant all of the abuse, like in storyline, that he's been taking from Braun Strowman? And then here he nearly kills the man. Like, if I didn't know any better, I would think they were setting up for a double turn between Strowman and Owens, which I do not think is what they're doing. But this is the sort of thing that you would do, I think, if you wanted to create sympathy for Kevin Owens. So I think this whole thing is just very confusing to me. And I think they're very lucky that the fans haven't turned on Braun Strowman yet, because he keeps picking on this guy. And other than just maybe, you know, kind of being a dick, which is sort of his general nature, I don't really know what Kevin Owens has done to warrant this. We had the Bludgeon Brothers against Team Hell No for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Bryan came out alone. He started the match alone, 2-on-1, after the attack on Kane earlier. He held his own for a while until Kane came out mid-match. He was wearing a walking boot on his ankle, on his foot, and they let him wrestle like that. Now, I guess on the one hand you could say, oh, who's going to come tell Kane that he's not allowed to wrestle? But, I mean, let's be honest here, you know. I'm watching this and I'm thinking, good job, WWE medical staff. I wonder if they'd let this guy wrestle if he was out there in a full body cast. He had a couple of choke slams. I have to, by the way, say that I'm just playing around. There are people who actually take comments like that literally, probably young children, and don't know any better. So yes, I'm just joking. But he had a couple of choke slams. He went for a tombstone, couldn't get him up for it. Rowan went after the leg. Bryan tagged in. He did some yes kicks. He was setting up for the running knee, but he got caught. As he ran, he got caught, and he got shoved into Kane and knocked Kane out of the ring. Basically the same spot. They repeated the same spot from the opening match with Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt. And the Bludgeon Brothers hit a modified Doomsday device on Bryan for the pin. Lame finish, but the right outcome with the champs retaining. This was not a match where the Bludgeon Brothers should have dropped those titles. I'm hoping the leg injury, which hopefully is all storyline, is the end of Kane for a while. And he can go off and do mare things, and Bryan can move on to a meaningful singles program at SummerSlam, because that's what he should be doing at SummerSlam, whether he's re-signing or not. And I just saw the story on Fightful.com earlier today that claims WWE hasn't announced this yet, but they claim that Bryan has signed a new 2-year deal with the company, which, if that's the case, then plenty of time for him to match up with all these different people we haven't seen him in the ring with before, like Almas or Nakamura, or have more matches with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, and, you know, maybe even mix it up with guys on Raw at some point. So we'll see if that's official. I suspect we'll find out some point in the next few weeks. But look, SummerSlam is a big show, one of the biggest shows of the year. Bryan should be in a one-on-one match with somebody. I'm not really into this whole Team Hell No thing. I knew it was going to have a short shelf life anyway. This is a very short shelf life if this is the end of them, but if it is, I'm fine with that. In a surprise move, they put Roman Reigns against Bobby Lashley on in the middle of the show, not the main event spot. They had a pretty stiff match here, pretty hard-hitting stuff, some big bumps, good match. I thought they had a good match. The build-up was like television repellent to me. But it was always going to come down to one question. Can these two, forget the awful build-up, can these two guys have a good match together? The answer was yes. And Lashley was the one I was a little worried about because, as I've said before, he hasn't exactly looked great since he's come back. You could say whatever you want about Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns, we know he can go out and have great matches. He's had a lot of great pay-per-view matches, maybe not this year so much. This has not been a good year for him, but in the past, he can deliver when he has to deliver or when he's in there with the right opponent. Lashley, we haven't seen anything from since he came back. So this was going to be more of a test for him than anything else. Crowd tried to shit on this thing right away. Rusev Day chants. There were some boring chants. Chants of let's go Roman, Roman sucks. You know what the key is there? There were no Lashley chants. I didn't hear the crowd go Lashley. I didn't hear them chanting Bobby. There were no Bobby Lashley chants. It was just let's go Roman, Roman sucks. It's the John Cena thing all over again. That's what people don't seem to understand. If you truly do not like this man, if you truly do not like Roman Reigns, don't chant his name. People have not picked up on this yet. They're not too bright. They go out there, they chant his name. And then they wonder, why is this guy always in pay-per-view main events? And why is he always getting chants after chants after chants? Yeah, gee, I wonder why. It's because of people like you. If you would shut up, maybe you would send them a message. Or better yet, chant for the other guy. Reigns caught Lashley with an elbow early that rocked him. At least that was the story the announcers were telling. He was all out of sorts for a while. He was a little loopy there. Later on, Roman had Lashley on his shoulders in sort of an AA position, and he just dumped him out of the ring. Lashley, he cleared the ropes on the way out. It looked like he was trying to grab them on the replay, but he completely just tossed this guy over, and he bounced off the ground. That's a pretty sick bump for a 280-pound guy to take. Bounced right on his hip. There was another spot where Lashley was out on the floor. He was right in front of the German announce table. And Roman comes running in like he does for that drive-by that he does. Or sometimes he'll do a spear through the barricade. Here comes Roman running in, and Lashley catches him and gives him an overhead suplex onto the announce table. Then they go back inside. Roman hits a Superman punch. He's setting up for a spear. This is my yard. He's setting up for a spear. And Lashley catches him with a spear first and pins him right in the middle clean. 1, 2, 3. I said earlier today on the Sound Off, when I picked Lashley, when I was doing the predictions and I picked Lashley to win, I said, remember, they never announced this as a number one contenders match. The number one contenders match was canceled because of the Brock Lesnar storyline in favor of this match. But this was never meant to be a number one contenders match. So you could give Lashley a clean win without ruining whatever their plans may be for Roman, let's say, to face Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. They could do a number one contenders match on Raw in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, and Roman can win there, which is what I suspect is still going to happen. But Lashley needed this win way more than Roman Reigns did. It was the right move. It was the right call. And also, I'm sure in their view, and Vince McMahon's kind of warped view, this just creates more sympathy for Roman Reigns. It doesn't for me. Maybe I'm not the person he's trying to reach out to here. It doesn't create any sympathy for me, for Roman. He got cocky. Even the announcers brought it up. He was trash-talking Lashley before he went for the spear. He got cocky at the finish, and he paid the price for it. I can't have sympathy for a person like that. We had Alexa Bliss against Nia Jax for the Raw Women's title in an Extreme Rules match. Ronda Rousey was at ringside with her ticket. She was also with her husband, UFC fighter Travis Browne. Mickie James was in Alexa's corner. Natty was in Nia's corner. Nia was just toying with her first few minutes of the match until Bliss grabbed a trash can lid and she started smashing Nia with it. So then things got a little crazy. Mickie jumped up on the apron with the trash can lid, but she got yanked off by Natty. Natty's now beating her up on the outside. Alexa sees this. She comes over. She attacks Natty. Now it's 2-on-1. And then Natty's best friend, Ronda Rousey, is sitting in the front row and she says, I can't take this anymore. And she hops the barricade. She goes after Mickie James. She throws her a couple of times into the barricade, throws her into the ring, lays her out, takes her out, back outside the ring, tosses her over the announce table. So now Ronda turns and she locks eyes with Alexa Bliss. Alexa is on the opposite side of the ring where the aisleway is. And Ronda is burning a hole in her soul. She is staring her down from afar. She then chases after Alexa. Alexa tries to jump into the crowd. She's not fast enough. Ronda grabs her and throws her into the ring. Actually, even before that, getting ahead of myself here, before she could even bring her into the ring, Mickie is back with a kendo stick, and she attacks Ronda with the kendo stick from behind. Meanwhile, Alexa gets back into the ring. She's up top. Off the top rope she comes. Nia catches her. She's setting her up for a Samoan drop. Mickie James is back in, though, with a chair. She hits Nia in the back. Alexa follows that up with a pair of really weak chair shots. She clearly got trained in the Lance Storm school of chair shots, if you get that reference, from when Lance debuted, I think, in ECW, that infamous match with Rob Van Dam. You can look it up if you're not aware of what I'm talking about. So then she DDTs Nia on the chair and she pins her. So Alexa Bliss retains the championship. Much like the first women's match earlier in the show with Carmella and Asuka, this was less of a match and more of an angle. It was short, which was for the better, given who was involved. Like, I saw people on Twitter, on my timeline, complain, "Oh, what? This was a terrible match. This was a nothing match. It was only a few minutes long." Yeah, thank God. I don't think anybody would say Alexa Bliss or Nia Jax, when it comes to in-ring, are among the most elite in this company, especially Nia. So, hey, the shorter the match, the better off we all are. That is not something I'm going to complain about. But it also, the more important thing it does, Alexa had to win. There was no point in putting the belt back on Nia. Alexa had to win because it sets up her death at the hands of Ronda Rousey at SummerSlam. We had AJ Styles and Rusev for the WWE Championship. I enjoyed the hell out of this match. Up to this point, and actually looking back at the whole show now, probably for the entire show, this was my favorite match of the night. Styles was working over Rusev's leg, his left leg, with kicks early on in the match. Got him in the calf crusher later on. So he was really going after Rusev's leg. He sold the leg a lot during the match. There was a Machka kick that Rusev landed for a great near fall. This was very close. They got me. That's how close it was. Rusev tried to get the accolade on AJ, but couldn't because of his leg. He was still selling pain in the leg, but he got half an accolade locked in. Aiden English pulled the top turnbuckle pad off while this was going on in the opposite corner where the ref couldn't see. He pulled the top turnbuckle pad off. And so naturally what happens is, not even a minute later, Rusev ends up running headfirst into the exposed buckle. Styles immediately follows that up with a 450 springboard splash for a great near fall. I, and seemingly everybody I saw on TV in that building, thought that the match was over at that point, but it wasn't. So that was another great near fall there. Match went on for a few more minutes. AJ took out Aiden English, and then finally he finished off Rusev with a phenomenal forearm. Very good match. Either man winning would have been acceptable to me. You know, I'm a fan of both guys. But I thought it was too early to take the title off AJ. And AJ's had the title since November. But to me, I think the time for him to drop it, depending on, I guess, who he wrestles, is at SummerSlam. It just didn't feel, Extreme Rules in July just didn't feel like the right time for him to drop the title. So I think it was the right finish. And then we had Seth Rollins in the main event spot against Dolph Ziggler. 30-minute Iron Man match for the Intercontinental title. Dolph Ziggler headlining a pay-per-view for the IC title, no less. Headlining a pay-per-view for the IC title over AJ Styles and the WWE title. There is just something that feels very wrong about that. Now, I asked on Twitter, I wasn't sure. So I went to you guys. I said, when was the last time that the Intercontinental title headlined a pay-per-view? And a lot of you came up with the same answer that I initially had, but I said it couldn't possibly have been that long. A lot of you guys said SummerSlam in Wembley Stadium way back in 1992. That was Bret Hart against the British Bulldog. But a lot of you also pointed out the correct answer, which I had completely forgotten about, which was the match at Backlash in 2001. It was a tag team main event, the two-man power trip, Stone Cold and Triple H, against Undertaker and Kane, WWF title, IC title, tag team titles, all on the line. It was a triple header. And that counts. That technically counts because the IC title was defended. It was on the line in that match. As far as singles matches, and by the way, that would be 17 years between IC title main events on pay-per-view here in WWE. As far as singles matches go, the answer is SummerSlam 1992. So you could also argue that a lot of you guys were correct. If you were talking about singles matches, that's 26 years ago. See, this is what happens when you have a Universal Champion on your show who's never booked to actually come to work. These are the things that happen. Coach said on commentary that Shawn Michaels against John Cena was one of the greatest Iron Man matches in WWE, which was a very odd thing for him to say considering that the 50-minute match they had on Raw in the UK that he was referencing was not an Iron Man match. It just was a match that happened to go almost an hour. That does not make it an Iron Man match. Those two, I don't believe, have ever had an Iron Man match, so I don't know what the hell Coach was talking about. Rollins won the first fall with a buckle bomb into a La Magistral cradle. That was about 5 minutes in. So, silly me, I had predicted that these guys would go one fall. They were going to go the full 30 minutes, and the match was going to come down like WrestleMania with Bret and Shawn all those years ago to being decided by one fall, and not 5 minutes in, they made me look like a fool. So Rollins goes up almost immediately 1-0. So now we're 8 minutes in. Rollins goes up 2-0 with a curb stomp. And then, immediately after that, Drew McIntyre gets into the ring, and he inexplicably attacks Seth Rollins, which gets Dolph Ziggler disqualified and puts him in a 3-0 hole. Why would McIntyre not come in and attack Dolph and give Dolph a DQ fall? Apparently he was blind with rage. And he went after Rollins and he got his boy disqualified. Referee kicks McIntyre out, but before he left, he laid out Rollins with the Claymore kick. Ziggler crawls over, he gets the pin, so now he was down 3-1. Then he hit a super kick. Closes the gap. 3-2. Then he hit a zigzag. 60 seconds later, tie things up 3-3 with 17 minutes left to go. Not even 2 minutes after that, Ziggler scores another fall with his feet on the ropes to make it 4-3. This is what is so goofy about a match like this, okay? These two guys had a match on TV. I want to say 3 weeks ago it was when they had that great match on Raw. That match went almost 30 minutes. I think it was like 27 or 28 minutes or something. And it was near fall after dramatic near fall. It was great stuff. But nobody could score the winning fall. They just kept kicking out of everything. And it came down to, I think it was a DQ, but it came down to the one deciding fall. Here, 15 minutes in, there were 7 falls. 7 falls in half the time of their first match that was decided by 1. That's what's so goofy about these kinds of matches. Now, I have to talk about the crowd. Crowd was the biggest story maybe of this entire match because they made themselves the biggest story of the entire match. The crowd hijacked the match with the Royal Rumble chants because they had the countdown clock up on the Titantron. Every time, each minute that went by, the counter would say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 until the next minute counted down. Well, I guess these people thought they were either at the Royal Rumble or they were trying to lobby WWE to bring a Royal Rumble back to Pittsburgh because every single minute that went by, they did the 10-second countdown and they did the noise, the countdown noise, they did that noise every single time. It wasn't enough to do it once or twice or 3 times. They had to do the countdown and the buzzer noise every single time. Was it annoying? You bet your ass it was. You bet your ass it was. And then, so what happened is, they must have taken, I didn't see this, but they must have taken the clock off of the screen because they didn't want them to do that anymore. And they got very salty. The crowd got very cranky when that happened. And so they ended up putting the clock back up. And this just continued for the remainder of the match. Now, look, I'm all in favor of you buy a ticket, you go and have fun, as long as you don't hop the barricade or just shout profanity the entire time. People want to go and have fun. I honestly, I can't crap on the crowd too much. It was annoying as shit. And I wish they wouldn't have done that. But they've also been sitting there for a very long time with what overall was not a very good show. So you know what? If they were bored, if their mind was wandering, I can understand why they wanted to entertain themselves. And look, they seemed like they were having a good time. But I could see where it would take a lot of people out of the match. It seemed like they weren't even really paying attention to the match, and it hurt the match. That's why I hated this so much. So I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to go and have fun, but when it hurts the match, that sucks. And them putting themselves over and pulling this nonsense, it's one thing to do it a few times, you do it for a few minutes. To do it for the whole fucking match, that's a little much. So I didn't like that. Finally, though, things calmed down a little bit with all these pinfalls, these rapid-fire pinfalls that we were getting. Rollins was down 1 fall. He kept glancing up at the clock. He landed a frog splash for a near fall. He hit the superplex into the Falcon Arrow for another near fall. With 4.5 minutes left to go in this match, Rollins hit a slingshot on Ziggler. He hit the post. He cradled Ziggler and pinned him. And so now it was all knotted up, 4 falls apiece. With 2 minutes to go, Rollins locked Ziggler in the sharpshooter. He let go, turned it into a crossface. Ziggler got out. So now there's 45 seconds left on the clock. Ziggler gets a near fall on a Famouser. It's a great near fall. Rollins hits a super kick and a curb stomp right as the clock counted down to 0 before he could crawl over and make the pin. Time expires. JoJo announces that the match is a draw. But not so fast. Hometown hero Kurt Angle comes out. He says, we're not going to let this match end this way. We're going to sudden death until we have a winner. It's WrestleMania 12 all over again. Only problem is, as soon as the bell rings and the match restarts, out comes Drew McIntyre from the crowd. He was kicked out by the referee earlier. McIntyre jumps up onto the apron. Rollins knocks him off, but he's distracted. And in doing so, Ziggler hits the zigzag from behind, and he scores the pin. Wins the match. And with that, Dolph Ziggler retains the Intercontinental title. Now, what was so stupid about this, Kurt Angle just came out, right? He said, no, we can't have the match end this way. Come on, it's my hometown of Pittsburgh. We need to have a decisive winner. And as soon as he restarts the match, somebody interferes. Where was Kurt Angle? Well, knowing Kurt Angle, when we see him on TV, he was probably on his fucking phone. But that was stupid. Why wouldn't he come back out and restart the match again? Never happened. Poor Seth Rollins gets screwed. As far as the match goes, I thought it was a good match, despite the fans being annoying and almost ruining it. But it was disappointing. It was disappointing in that this could have been and should have been, I think, a lot better than it was. So yeah, as good as it was, it could have been a lot better. I've seen these two guys even just a few weeks ago go out there and kill it and have a great match. This was not great, but it does set up two possible outcomes, I think, the way I see it. You have to think that McIntyre, even though he did help Dolph win in the end and they were celebrating together, him costing Ziggler a fall so early in the match and putting him down 3-0, I would have to think, I would hope, if these people know how to tell a story, which is very suspect, that will come up again at some point, and perhaps it will play a role, maybe in some dissension between the two of them. Could play into some bad feelings between them. Could we be setting up for a three-way at SummerSlam for the title with Ziggler, McIntyre, and Rollins, which I think would be a great match? Or with Rollins not regaining the championship, I thought he was going to win the belt back tonight. He did not. And since he didn't, is there still a chance that Seth Rollins could find his way into the Universal title picture going into SummerSlam? All it takes, even though he lost tonight, and it's not like Kurt Angle's going to come out and make this guy who just lost the number one contender, but if there's a number one contenders, let's say, multi-man match in a few weeks like they were originally going to do on this show, who's to say that Seth Rollins isn't one of the 4, 5, or 6 guys in that match and that he doesn't win the whole thing? And it could be Seth Rollins going on to challenge Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. I don't know how likely that is, but it's possible. It would have been a hell of a lot less likely had he won the belt back tonight, but he didn't. So, hey, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But the last two matches were the best on the show. Lashley and Roman was right behind them. But this was a thumbs down show. I thought overall this was a thumbs down show. You want to stretch these shows out. You want to make them longer. They all start now at 7 p.m., 6 p.m. pre-show matches. Fine. You cannot have a pay-per-view that long and expect to give people 2 or 3 pretty good matches or 2 or 3 really good matches on a card that has 11 matches. There's an imbalance there. So I cannot in good conscience sit here and say this was a thumbs up show because it wasn't. And we'll do what we always do here at the end of these reviews. We will go right now and check the Twitter poll, which has been up for only about half an hour, maybe 35 minutes. And as I'm looking at this, we already have just shy of 2,000 votes. And this time I did something I don't normally do. I put a thumbs in the middle option. I caved. Everybody's, put thumbs in the middle. So I finally put thumbs in the middle, which I hate doing because it's such a crutch for people. I can't decide. I'll just go thumbs in the middle. I like forcing people to make a decision. Go up or down. Whatever. I caved this time, and thumbs down is winning. 45% of you say thumbs down. 36% of you say thumbs in the middle. And only 19% give this show a thumbs up. So clearly I am not in the minority here, in my opinion, on this show. Maybe you disagree. What did you like? What did you hate about this pay-per-view? Leave a comment down below in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up if you would be so kind to do so. I would very much appreciate that. And hit the subscribe button so when more videos like this go up, you will be notified. You could also listen to the full Sound Off podcasts each and every Sunday on the Solomonster.com. We are on Spotify. We are on Stitcher, iTunes, the new Google Podcasts app, all the major platforms. I'm sure you'll be able to find us a whole bunch of different ways. And you can tune in every Sunday for the full podcasts. Until next time, I'm the Solomonster. I'll be back for SummerSlam is the next big pay-per-view coming up next month. You can find all the other show clips here on this channel as well. Until next time, be well, stay safe, have yourselves a great rest of your week, and I'll see you back here on the YouTube channel for more content real soon. Until then, take care, guys.